The podcast of Dr. Jorland is an independent production, and all rights are reserved. It is solely intended for educational and marketing purposes. His views are his own and do not reflect those of his university or employer. Hello and welcome to the first episode of my new podcast. In this episode, I am inviting Dr. Peter Haftkowycz to tell us a little bit more about his journey to residency, but answering one specific question. How hard was for him to get into residency? How hard was for him to match? So, enjoy! Today we have my friend Peter Haftkowycz. I'm sorry, my English is not the best, my friend.
Oh, that was wonderful.
Actually, you teach me English every day also.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate being here.
No, I really like that you are here. And let me tell you something. Well, you know already, but the people might not know. This is the first episode we do on this show. Previously I had, and this is the first time I'm doing this in English. I had a kind of podcast show where I was talking about giving tools on how to match, how to do it better, how to increase your chances, especially for people that is coming from outside, like IMGs. They don't know how the system works, as IMGs is difficult. I'm talking about non-US IMGs, people that do their medical career in another country, and not in the Caribbean, not even in the Caribbean, so outside of those places. I'm glad you are here, and I brought you here in this first episode of this kind of new season that we are doing because we're gonna talk about a question. We're gonna try to answer this question that I am usually asked. And first you will tell me if the question is fair, but this is a question. How hard is it to match? Or is it hard to match? What do you have to say?
I would say in a situation that's quite unique to anybody applying for residency, where you have essentially a 6-month-long job process, job application that takes that long with so many different steps and such varying odds in matching into your specialty of choice. I would say it's pretty difficult. It's quite unique in its own right.
Yeah, I appreciate that, your opinion. I actually think it's not a fair question, because for some people it can be harder than for other people. Of course. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, so you were just talking about foreign IMGs. I myself am a US IMG, and so the stakes are much different compared to an American graduate. Or even a DO graduate. So it is quite a variety of applicants out there that have a varying degree of likelihood of matching, and then the specific specialty that you are applying to also, there's a degree of variability there. So it is a very dynamic process as to whether you're going to match into one specialty, another, what kind of applicant you are. There's a lot of variables here.
Talking about that, about the journey and the specialty, because you are now in anesthesia.
Correct.
It's at this point everything is competitive, but classically anesthesia or anything that is procedure heavy in procedures, in the fields in the specialties in medicine is usually harder to match.
Correct.
Classically, but at this point everything is hard. When you match, did you just apply the first time and then you got the position?
No, I did not actually. I was unfortunate in the sense that I did not match my first time. I did not apply broadly enough as I should have. Honestly, I think I even got a little cocky with my exam scores. The places that I had rotated at, I felt like I had made a good enough network where I was a shoo-in. I think I got 6 or 7 interviews, only in anesthesia, the only specialty I'd applied to. And come that Monday of match week, you get that not so pleasant email, and it's not a good feeling that first week. You have to go through 4 days of just applying and hoping and anxiety and just wishing that something happens.
Probably depression, right?
Yeah, it's a rough week. I don't wish on anybody. But luckily, I was fortunate enough to have gotten a position through the SOAP.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah, in preliminary surgery in New York, in the Bronx. So I lucked out there, and having that experience helped me to match into anesthesia my second time.
So, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
Please.
So, the soap actually works.
Yes.
Because there is people, a lot of people, most of them probably applicants that are hopeless. They say soap doesn't work. How was that for you? Like, you did a match, okay? And then you just selected a couple of programs randomly. Were you depressed? Or what happened? Tell me what happened there.
Well, the entire soap week, I know that the structure's a little different now. This was back in 2019, if I remember correctly, when that process was happening. So I know that there have been some changes, but the Monday you get the email essentially saying, unfortunately you did not match. And then an hour later, around noon on that Monday, they release all the programs that had not yet matched and how many positions they have. And you get basically 40 applications that are available, 40 magic bullets, where you have this entire menu of programs that are available, and you only have 40 tries to, send out a love letter to these programs and hope that in the next 2 days they will contact you and hopefully select you in the match. And so what I personally did, there were a few anesthesia positions open. Of course, I applied to those. But then at that point, it was more of, I got to play the numbers game. So I did go primarily for prelim surgery and prelim IM positions that had large numbers that needed to be filled. I was playing the numbers game because I would rather get something that's a 1-year contract now instead of twiddling my thumbs for a year, because then I can use that as for the following match in the next cycle. I'm not applying as a medical student anymore. I'm applying as a resident. So that's it's a big thing. So what I would say to people that if they are in this position and they're wondering, hey, I don't know if I should just wait till next year, and I don't know, maybe I'll just do research or drive Uber for a year. Don't do that. Apply for SOAP into these preliminary positions, and you will, in your next cycle, you're applying as a resident candidate, not a medical student. It sets you apart from all the other candidates. So it is of benefit.
So you will have 1 year of experience. You'll have US letter of recommendation, letters of recommendation. Your skills will be better in general. But going back a little bit. So that week, you sent your 40 applications. I don't know if there are still 40 programs that you... Yeah, I think this year it changed or something. I don't know. I'm not sure. You guys check that on the official website. Remember, we don't... I mean, this is not like a substitution for the official rules of the match. Always confirm whatever is said here.
Just a commentary.
In the official sources, okay? This is
NRMP
just comment. And this was like years ago, so we don't remember. But here are the tools and here are the tricks and the people that knows, because we already went through this. You apply. You got interviews. Probably that Wednesday you got interviews. Now, let me ask you a number. How many interviews you had?
0.
0?
0.
And on Thursday?
0.
And what happened?
So actually it was the Friday. It was match day. And it was about noon is when you get your official match letter. I didn't get anything. And it was about an hour later. I was walking to the library and I got a call from the program director.
I wanted to go to that point. So you didn't get an email. You got a call. And this was actually after the official positions were released in the official website.
That is correct.
Meaning, I'm from Venezuela, you know this. So, traditionally, let's say, people used to come here during the interview season. They will do medical school in Colombia, in Mexico, whatever. And they will come for the interview season, they will go back to their country. You think, like, they're gonna email these people? I mean, or do you think they're gonna call, right?
You would think. I have some friends that were in that soap cycle as well. They may have gotten 1 or 2, and it was all phone calls.
Yeah. So what I would recommend, I said this in the master class last month, and I said this last year. I know, guys, sometimes it's difficult to like organize a trip to the US because of the money, especially because of the money probably, and you want to wait for your results in your home country, you know, in Latin America or in Europe, wherever you are from. But if you can be here with an active US phone number, please come here. Please come here, because I'm pretty sure they are not gonna call through WhatsApp, and most likely they are not gonna email you. They wanna fill these positions quickly because it's the last chance. Remember, you want a match, and they want people to work for the hospital also. So they cannot have the luxury of the low speed of the emails.
Yeah, and
you know,
and you want to have.
They're gonna call.
You want to have a US number, because if they call you and it doesn't go through, they're not calling a second time. They're moving to the next person on the list. So
exactly.
If you miss that call.
And you are not the first person that tells me this.
Yeah.
And you know, you see the numbers, and I talk to people, and they say, yeah, SOAP doesn't work because I didn't get anything. But were you in the US with an actual phone number here? You know, how many calls, if they do them, which I don't think they do, because most people say, no, for international applicants, SOAP doesn't work. You know, like, how do you know? Because you were not here, you didn't get the call.
Well, and I guess I should backtrack a little bit, because you asked me, does the SOAP work? I said yes. I didn't match in the SOAP technically, but I have friends that were US IMGs like myself that did match through the SOAP. I did not. I matched outside of it. But it was through the SOAP that program had gotten my application.
Yeah.
I ended up on their list, and after the SOAP was done, they still had 6 positions to fill. So they were just going down the list calling people, because the problem with the SOAP is that there isn't enough time for the programs to interview enough candidates for these few positions that they have. Because in the SOAP, you might have, let's say, 50 applicants that are outstanding. They got 260 on both of their tests and everything's perfect on their application. But you've got the same 40 programs that are interviewing these few people for 100 positions, and then when they only fill 50 out of 100, all these other programs are scrambling themselves. The programs need their own SOAP almost, so.
Okay, and I'm sorry, because this was like a big parenthesis. I didn't know that was your journey, even though you are my friend. And I thought I knew the whole story. I'm now even more impressed. And I think this is even more useful for that people that is like hopeless sometimes. Because there are people that apply once or twice or a third time.
Don't give up. That's the point of this story. Do not give up.
But going back to the main question, like, I mean, based on your story, I would say it's super hard matching, you know, like it's really hard. Not only, I mean, we have to go through medical school, which is not easy. Mm-hmm. Here is 3 to 4 years here in the US, and in the Caribbean schools is probably the same. In Latin America, we are ranging from programs that last 5 years to 7 years. Mine was 6.5 to 7 years. Was pretty long. Then the people that don't live here, they have to go through a process to move to another country. In my case, I had to do it. I have to come here, do the USMLE steps. I didn't know anything about it. My medical school was in Spanish. Like it was obviously I'm not a native English speaker, obviously. So I would say answering like actually how hard it is, it's unfair. Like the question is very unfair.
No, it's very unfair. And you've got some people, like you're saying, from their home countries who have already completed a residency training. Now they come back, they got to take all those USMLE exams in a foreign tongue, and they have to redo their residency just so they can practice here. I find that kind of bogus on the same front, but those are the rules.
I came here, after medical school, like 1 or 2 years after. We have to do like some general practice there. We can do that there. But yeah, I wasn't thinking about the people that actually do residency in their countries, and then they come here.
And they have to go through the match.
They have to go through the match, and then they have to go through residency.
I know.
In order to practice here. Pete, so far I think it's been very clear, but I want to go into like a little bit in detail about your experience. Mm-hmm. Because, as he said, he got that position, and then he had to reapply for anesthesia because that was in surgery. That was so how was that year? Like, was it hard? Because that's another part, you know. You were still in your journey, you know.
So also not a fair question, because during my intern year, COVID hit. So it was a rough year just being an intern in a hospital once COVID hit. But the year was rough. Any year in residency, whether you're in pediatrics or you're in neurosurgery, it's going to be rough because you're a resident. So yeah, it was a rough year of surgery, an intern. I learned so much valuable information that I still use in my practice now today as an anesthesia resident. But as far as the match goes, the benefit that I got from this 1 year of prelim surgery training is when I was applying and I was speaking during my interviews, the conversation was not, oh, what do you like to do? And why are you picking this specialty? It wasn't any of that. All they wanted to talk about was what I have learned. They want to talk about my interesting patients in residency and what kind of procedures had I done so far. And the conversation was much different this time around. I had gotten more interviews this past year. I had done the smart move and I applied to backup specialties, even though I did end up matching in anesthesia. I applied to surgery, I applied to family, I applied
Which
to
obviously was the one you wanted, right?
It was the one I wanted, but
you were pursuing that.
Again, I will give the advice, never give up, but also have a backup plan, because I did not the first time and it was not a pleasant experience. So looking back, I'm glad I ended up in anesthesia, but a backup plan might have been nice.
Yeah. Going back to the SOA part, you applied to these 40 programs. At any point, and this is going more into the personal and the psych stuff, were you depressed? Like, do you think like if you will have just put your head down and don't do anything, you will be where you are right now?
No.
So I know people that have gone through this and they just, I'm not even gonna apply to this.
And it's one of the worst weeks of your life. Because you just feel like you hadn't, after all that work you put in, all the exams you studied for, all the rotations you had done, all the things that you had sacrificed to get to this point, and then you get one email that just tells you, nope, not good enough. And you think to yourself, well, why do I keep going? Why do I keep trying? But I was in a rotation during that time, and I had to still go into the hospital and do my rotation.
Act normal,
like
nothing
everything's fine, but there are certain deadlines during SOAP week that you have to submit your application at a certain time. You have to check for emails from programs at certain times, so you're always on your phone. I'd let my attending know, and so there were times where I would excuse myself.
Yeah, everybody asking you, oh, did you match?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I didn't, shut up.
Exactly.
I didn't, shut up.
It's a terrible social experiment that I don't wish on my worst enemy, but if you do just bury your head in the sand and just say, I'm just going to let this week blow over and then, I'll figure something else out. Yeah, you're gonna lose out on something if you just say, I'll wait till next year. Power through, apply to play the numbers game again. Unless you really feel strongly about certain programs, you have to try and get something, because applying as a resident the following year will be a much better scenario than you having a gap year and applying as a student again.
Another unfair question for you.
Sure.
If you had to choose just one thing in the whole process of the application or the whole journey, like to be something like determinant, like something like without this you will not match, what would be that thing? Would be like, I'm talking about like scores, a good personal statement, a good ERES application, letter of recommendation. If you had to choose only one thing, what would it be?
So I'm going to answer this in a two-parter. And the first one is going to be, what's the most important for you to get the interview? Scores. For IMGs, whether US or foreign IMG, scores are what's going to get your foot in the door. Once your foot is in the door to get to the interview, what is going to make those people like you? Plain simple, just be yourself and don't be an asshole. I know it sounds kind of simple, but at the end of the day, these people are looking at you and they just want to know, can I work with this person for 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 years? And if in those 15, 20 minutes that you're talking to your attendings that are interviewing you and grilling you, if they detect any kind of conflict that they might see in the future, they're not going to pick you. So be humble, be happy that they invited you. They literally invited you to have you join their program, and you just need to sit there and explain to them how you are going to make their program better. And
do not exaggerate that happiness either, right?
No, exactly. Don't be fake.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm happy to be here, everybody.
They can read through that because you think that
you have to be nice. That they be. I know it sounds genetic, but you have to be yourself. Yeah. But you have to know how to sell yourself.
Right.
This is like a business stuff.
Because you think you're being unique, but they're seeing 50 to 100 of you a day that look just like you. They're wearing the same suit, tie, blouse, skirt, whatever. They see the same person over and over and over again, and you've got to find a way to make yourself, be approachable and comforting, but also stand out.
You know what I like doing when I'm going through job interviews? And I did it too.
What do you do?
I mean, I always wear a suit. I iron the suit, whatever is clean, everything. It doesn't have to be
gotta look crisp.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like the most expensive. But you know what I like doing? Besides showing up nicely and all that, that my socks have like a detail, like a nice socks color.
Okay.
It will stand out a little bit. Those are like business tricks. It's not like plain.
I'm a
black or blue. I'm
more of a tie. I like bright ties.
But people don't remember ties. People don't remember a lot of ties.
Funny enough, but Dr. Mancayo, one of our attendings in our program, she interviewed me. We started the conversation talking about my tie, and then it completely turned into we talked for 15 minutes about cooking. So I had a great interview with Dr. Mancayo, and the tie started it all.
Okay. So, these are
I'm sure the socks can do the same thing,
Because when people, I didn't take this from a hospital, but I take this from marketing resources. These kind of details, like they talk about socks a lot. Maybe ties are also there. Like in a good job interview, if you have like nice socks, they will remember like. For good or for bad, like if you did a good interview, the guy that had the socks, that was a great guy, and you increases your, at least they remember you. Or of course, it also depends. The guy that had these Nike socks, actually the guy I don't like that one.
See,
but something that makes them remember in your look.
Yeah, no.
Make them remember
that
you.
Is a great
Especially
point.
Because all Hispanics names are Alejandro Gonzalez, William Sierralta, Jorland. This is like, they don't really remember all the names. Yeah. And if you go through Europe or India, all these names are like, uncommon. In the US, some of them are difficult to pronounce. So they are not going to remember you by your name. They are going to remember you by something special. And they can link something in your look to your performance that day. So that's good.
Absolutely, because you need to find a way to stand out. Because at the end of every interview day, the entire team will sit down and they will discuss the 10, 20, 50 applicants that they interviewed that day, and they will try to...
And talking about the interviews, I know you touched on this, but do you believe, or did you even use these books that are like the Bible of the interviews? 1,000 questions for the match, and you just read the book, memorize, and then just vomit those answers once they come on the interview.
I mean, I did not buy any of these books. I did look up a few of these. What are some classic interview questions? Like, what's the last non-study book that you read, or what's your spirit animal, or stuff like that. And I read, I don't know, maybe 50 of these classic interview questions. I did not get a single one of those questions on my interview, except at one. I got asked the spirit animal question in one interview.
And you probably got asked, tell me about yourself.
Tell me about yourself.
The classic one.
The classic stuff, which is basically they want to know who you are when you're not studying. You know, are you someone that literally
like, I sent you my CV. Did you
right, exactly.
I sent you my CV. Did you read it? Oh yes, I read it. Okay, tell me about my.
It's 50-50 on whether or not they actually read your CV before you walk in the door. But you'll know when they do, because they'll ask you questions like, "Oh, I see that you wrote a research article on this particular subject. Why don't you tell me about that experience?" So you'll be like, "Oh, wow, you actually took a minute to look at who I am beforehand." But sometimes, they'll just say, "Tell me about yourself." I know that guy didn't read the CV.
Yeah. That's like that. Yeah.
I will say this about interviews. In my personal experience, I find that there are two strategies to really feel like you walk out of the interview knowing that you've done well. And the first one is get them to ask you a question about something that you can go on about. If they find something about in your CV that you truly know and you're like, man, I can riff for 10-15 minutes and you can just run out the clock, you've done fantastic. Because if you get to that awkward point where there's like 5 minutes left and they don't have any questions and you don't have any questions, they're going to remember that awkward sound. The second strategy is I don't think it's the better one, but if you can get them to keep talking. Because as long as you don't have that awkwardness...
You can do that. There are ways to do that, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and you just have to run out the clock for them to say, "Oh, well, we've run out of time. It was great to meet you, Jorland."
They're going to remember because you make them feel good.
Exactly, because you kept the conversation going. They're like, I can hang out with this guy in the OR because we can just keep talking. You know? Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Peter, thank you so much for being here today, being here in the show. The idea is just helping people, helping medical students, actual doctors from other countries, IMGs, getting people into the system. I think everybody just want to work, just want a good living, just want to enjoy time with their families. They just want to feel value in the system because of all this effort that we do as medical students, as doctors. And I think this is a good resource. Guys, feel free to share this episode with whoever you want. Feel free to follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel. We're going to have more about this. Thank you so much again, Peter.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Jorland, and congratulations on your first episode of Without Anesthesia.
Thank you. Goodbye, guys.